head of HS2 was on £625,000, and some 46 executives at HS2 earn more than 150 grand a year.
Yes, well, to discuss this in more detail, we're joined by two former civil servants and loyal GB News viewers. I don't know if you are royal, you might be, but you're definitely loyal. Two former civil servants, William Pickup, whose roles included Director National Operational Services at HMRC, and another one, Stephen Guy, who used to work for the Crown Prosecution Service. Thank you both so much for joining us this morning. William, let's start with you. What do you make of this idea that civil servants are overworked and underworked and what is it?
Underworked and overpaid.
That's the one.
I'm glad you got the question the right way around, thank you. Nice to meet you guys, by the way. That's a standard line for civil servants. In my experience, civil servants are really dedicated people. They do work hard. Senior civil servants' pay, which is the other issue, should definitely be capped at the Prime Minister's salary. And I noticed you talked about 600 people who in the civil service get paid more than the Prime Minister. But that's mainly across the whole of the public sector. Civil servants are about 130 of those. So my basic principle is, no, civil servants should not be paid more than the Prime Minister. There may be some exceptions, HS2 might be a good example, where they cannot and they do not have the technical skills in-house to be able to do that, and they have to go and actually recruit these people from specialist private sector areas. So on that basis, yes, I can see some exceptions. I think the report you allude to is 113 pages long, which lists the people who earn more than £150,000, and that is pretty surprising. There's even more than that, because this report only covers people like the civil servants, other government departments, Quangos, that sort of thing. It doesn't include areas like the NHS, the BBC, councils. So I imagine the figure of 600 is far greater than you believe it to be.
You both work for two of the most unpopular organisations in the country, HMRC and CPS. I mean, some might say it's a kind of danger money. If you're going to work for those sorts of organisations, and you have to admit that to people that you meet on the street, maybe you get some sort of recompense for those jobs. Do you think that you get a hard time, if I can come to you, Stephen, because of the roles that you have, very necessary to run a Western democracy, but very unpopular roles? I mean, you might be lovely people, but when you tell people what you do for a living, it doesn't endear them to you, does it?
In some cases it doesn't, but generally speaking, I really enjoyed my time working for the Crown Prosecution Service. I worked for other government departments as well, so I had a good breadth of experience. But no, I had a very enjoyable working life, and I would agree that most civil servants do actually work very hard. We're no different to any other workforce. You have the good and the bad. I would say that the difference with the public sector, with the civil service, is that you've got to keep an eye on it, because going back to the old adage that work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion, that certainly applies to the public sector. So you've got to keep an eye on government departments and control what they're doing, how many people that they're employing, and certainly the salaries that they're paying. And nobody in the civil service, with the exceptions that have just been mentioned, nobody in the civil service, for goodness sake, should be earning more than the Prime Minister.
But you see, you've just got the most extraordinary job security, haven't you, when you work for the civil service? You're not dependent on a company being profitable. It might be a very silly and a very basic question, but who sets those salaries?
There's a salary review board that I think reports to the Treasury and the Cabinet Office. And I know for the senior civil servants, they've had a very difficult time in terms of getting any pay award for the last 10 years, as have in fact most senior civil servants. But the point that was made about this drift, about the numbers of staff in the civil service going up, is documented in a report released last year. It shows that there's up to 51% more managers across the civil service than there were in 2010. In 2010, there was a dip because of the austerity. and certain grades have gone up 51%, and the most senior grades have actually risen by 25% in that 10-year period. Now, that's another problem. How is that justifiable?
Well, I was having a look at this morning around the number of civil servants there are and the changes over time, and it really does go downwards until you get to 2016. The EU referendum happens, and then suddenly there's this big boom. The government have said, look, we want to cut back, I think 91,000 is the figure they've given, and they say we're just trying to get back to roughly where we were in 2016. Do you think that's a fair proposal, Stephen?
I certainly agree that something's got to be done, and I'm over 40, by the way, Mercy. So in the old days, back in the 80s and 90s, one of my jobs in the civil service was to actually do this sort of thing. We carried out, all government departments were required to carry out a rolling programme of continuous inspection and review, where we were pushing down on numbers of staff, recommending more staff in some cases, but generally speaking, pushing down on the numbers of people that were employed within our departments. And all of that work that I was carrying out during that period was overseen by the Treasury. They had a department called the Staff Inspection and Evaluation Division, and they used to accompany us on certain inspections on a random basis. So all government departments were required to do this, and to the best of my knowledge, that work isn't taking place at the moment.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. William Pickup and Stephen Guy, they're one former HMRC and one former CPS, but don't hold that against them. Jonathan Marland, let me come to you, Lord Marland.